What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? They learned important lessons on the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. This is true for both men and women. Ernst & Young found that a whopping 94% of women holding a C-suite position played sports. Their wins and losses shaped their habits and who they would become. Join me on my journey to sit with some of the brightest executives in the world as we discuss how sports shape their professional trajectory. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, the voice of America's CEO community, I'm your host, Don Yeager, and this is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is one of the most prominent voices in sports, Jay Bilas. Jay was a 4-year starter on Duke's basketball team, where he learned a strong work ethic under coach Mike Krzyzewskis. After he was drafted by the Dallas Mavericks and played professionally overseas, he returned to Duke, where he served as Coach K's assistant for 3 seasons, helping to guide the Blue Devils to 2 national championships. In that window, while working for the program, he attended and graduated from Duke's Law School. Since 1992, Jay has taken the leadership lessons he learned on the court and applied them to the courtroom as an attorney for the law firm of Moore and Van Allen. He has since become one of basketball's most recognizable faces through his analysis on ESPN SportsCenter and College Game Day. His passion for cancer research led him to join the board of directors for the V Foundation, and I have enjoyed my time with him at Dick Vitale's gala over the years.
Preparation puts you in the best position to be successful. It doesn't entitle you to that. It's amazing how often you think about what happens if I miss, instead of I may miss, but I'm not afraid of missing. That's what competitors do. You have to condition yourself to perform under pressure. Everybody has to deal with pressure. But are you willing to accept, okay, I may make a mistake, but I'm not afraid to make a mistake. I'm fully prepared and I'm going to execute.
Jay, thanks for joining us.
Oh, Don, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be with you as always.
You know, I have loved what I've been able to learn with and through you for many years, but I know you've learned a lot from a guy I'm looking forward to talking to you about today, Coach K, your mentor, your coach at Duke. You met him when you were 17. You went on to start 105 games for him at Duke. And then you returned in 1990 to serve as an assistant coach and earn a law degree while you're an assistant coach. I'm still not sure how you pulled that off. But you shared that outside of your family, he's been the most meaningful relationship you've had in your life. And I'd love to have you share what he means in your personal growth and what he has taught you.
Wow. It's a profound relationship in so many ways that I've had with Coach K. And it's been over 40 years now that I've known him. And the coach-player relationship didn't end when my eligibility was up. He's been my coach for all this time.
Mm.
I was really lucky that I have great parents, and I had one great teacher named Billy Kramer. He was a drama and speech and debate teacher. I probably learned more from Billy Kramer than any other coach other than Coach K that I've ever had. So I felt like I came to Duke with a good foundation, but Coach K took everything I learned and it was a force multiplier by a multiple of 10. There's not a day that goes by, honestly, that I don't think about something that I learned from Coach K and applying it to my daily life, my job, whether it's as a lawyer or a broadcaster, whatever it may be. And I'm eternally grateful for that. And for a guy my age now, I'm 58, to have had my coach in the same job for all those years, to have that sort of influence, I can't express my gratitude for it. I don't even know the right word. Blessing doesn't seem to cover it. And you mentioned that I went to law school. I wouldn't have gone to law school if it weren't for Coach K.
Really?
Yeah, I would not have gone. My parents wanted me to go, and I had other people urging me to do it. But I was playing professional basketball in Europe after I graduated. And after my 3rd year, Coach K knew I had applied to Duke Law School. But if I got admitted, which I was thinking was a coin flip at best, I wanted to defer and continue to play. Coach K called me and said, I want you to serve as a grad assistant on my staff. If you take it, will you go to law school at the same time? Will you do that? I told him, well, do you think I should? And he did. But I know behind the scenes, he was the one that worked that out and made it happen. He was also really influential in my broadcast career. He knew that was an interest of mine out of high school. And he got a former Duke alum named Chuck Howard to give me a job during the summertime. And I worked for ABC Sports during the summer. And that really greased the skids for my broadcast career. Had that not happened, I know I never would have gotten into broadcasting. You know him so well, like he's a big thinker. He may not get credit for it, but he thinks beyond basketball. And I really credit him for setting up my later life and the decisions I made. If it weren't for him, it certainly wouldn't have happened this way. I don't think I would have been selling pencils on the street to make a living, but at the same time, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now and have the depth of experience that I have.
I love what you said there. The coach player relationship didn't end when you graduated, when you left Duke. There are so many people who feel get used up in athletics and then immediately you're discarded. But in the proper relationship and with the proper leader, this extends and it's life changing. It transcends everything else about the 94 feet.
No question. Basketball was the most important thing to me in my life when I was 17 years old. He knew that, but he also knew I had other things that I was interested in and wanted to do long term. He was always thoughtful about that. It's funny, Don, it's kind of like a parent. He was an authority figure over the most important thing in my life. He had authority over everything I did. His approval is still really important to me.
Hmm.
It doesn't impact the way I do my job because my credibility is really important to me. So it doesn't necessarily color what I do or say in my job, but there's still a feeling that I don't want to disappoint him. At age 58, I still feel that way.
Wow.
I still feel the same way about him that I do about my parents. Like if my parents would be disappointed in me, that would be really affecting. And it's still the same way with Coach K. I'll never be able to call him Mike. He's not a Mike to me. He's a Coach K to me. So I call him Coach. It's not just a sign of respect. It cuts to the very heart of our relationship. And I think all of his players feel that way, whether they're 65 years old or whether they're 25.
That's awesome. I want to come back to a moment that you were part of. It occurred at the end of the 1983 season. You guys had lost by 43 points to Virginia to end the season. I know Coach actually gathered you all there on the sidelines, not to rush to the locker room, but to take a quick look at the scoreboard one more time on your way out. But then he ends up at Denny's, which I guess is where you go after you lose by 43. There's this famous story that some people that were there raised their glasses and said, "Here's to forgetting tonight. Let's put this one away." Coach refused to raise his glass and he offered this nugget of gold, which I've thought about a million times. He said, "No, here's to moments like this that you should never forget. You should stand there. You should look at the scoreboard a little longer," because he didn't want to forget what it felt like to lose that way. Can you tell me what you remember about that situation and what you learned?
Well, that was at the end of my freshman year where we started all freshmen in a league full of senior lottery picks, where the first team all ACC is now in the Naismith Hall of Fame. We were unprepared for that kind of competition. We became prepared the next year, but that year was like being in a prize fight where the bell never rang. In the second half, 5 minutes in, we knew we weren't going to win. The air came out of the balloon and we collapsed. Virginia poured it on us. They had Ralph Sampson and Odell Wilson. They were the number one team in the country. It got way out of hand. It wasn't just the aftermath of that game. The first practice of our next season, when we walked out on the floor on October 15th, that score was on the Duke scoreboard, 109-66. That's why I remember the score.
Wow.
It's something you want to forget, but he didn't allow us to. That's where we first learned the failure is not a destination. We failed last year, but that's not where we were going to stay. But we never lost to Virginia after that. The media said, "Oh, the Duke class of '86 made a pact." We wouldn't make a pact like that. That would be ludicrous. But it certainly sharpened us to be more competitive and to never want that feeling again, not only of getting beaten, but getting beaten like that. None of us had ever been beaten like that before. It was brutal. But he maintained on an edge of disapproval of how we had played, but at the same time, positive, and that's not who we are. And he always maintained a steadfast belief in us, and I believe us in him. That can be a fine line sometimes. And he always walked that really well.
How could a lesson like that, failure is not a destination, don't forget your low moments, how can something like that resonate and become useful to those who are trying to build a business career?
Well, the first thing I would say is that failure is a part of everything we do. Acknowledging failure is important. You may fail in a task, you may fail in a game. I've had failures as a lawyer, as a broadcaster, but to be able to honestly assess those failures and where you are right now in relation to where you want to be, and then attack the problem positively. So instead of beating yourself up over why you failed, you're assessing why you failed and correcting it and acting positively on that. Even though Coach K can be brutally honest, if you're not prepared to accept that, you can beat yourself up and let it affect your confidence. But he was always really good about acting positively upon a failure and self assessing. And he did that when we were winning. I remember times when we won a game and he would be more upset about the way we played than when we lost. It was more about our performance rather than the opponent. Would that performance have beaten the best teams tonight? If the answer was no, we had to answer for it. But I always felt like it was positive. The other part, Don, is Coach K was and is incredibly demanding. I never remember a time that he was demeaning. His criticism never cut to your character as a person or an athlete. It was about your performance. This performance you put up was not you. You have to get back to being you. Every player goes through highs and lows with confidence, and I did too. His way of doing things kept us confident, but at the same time, being responsible for a failure in an assignment, a failure in a game, a failure to prepare, whatever it was. We met those challenges and we were honest about what had happened and then acted positively to correct it.
I love that whole be demanding, but not demeaning. That is powerful, powerful, especially, as people are looking at employee reviews or actually trying to draw and get the most from their talent in other venues than basketball. There are a lot of people who can win occasionally, but sustaining excellence, as coach has over these last 30 plus years, is difficult. In fact, no coach in Division One men's basketball has won more games. What do you believe is the key to sustained excellence when you look at what you've learned and seen there and maybe compared it to other organizations that have had quite the peaks and valleys?
That's a profound question. I think for Coach K in his 43 years at Duke, the fundamentals that are necessary to win and the fundamentals of avoiding losing, he's attuned to. As we all get older, sometimes you can get tired of the routine. The routine is the most important part of things. The day-to-day fundamental execution of your job. When you get tired of that, that's when you see slippage in the results. The most impressive thing to me about Coach K in everything that he does is that he is never tired of the day-to-day aspect of his job. He has never waned in enthusiasm. Even at age 75, he might not move the same way. He doesn't jump into drills on the court like he used to, and that was never any fun when he would jump in. So he's changed things because of his age on the physical side, but not on the mental side. That's been the marvel to me. You've seen it with other older coaches that tire of the day-to-day part, and that's what gets him out. He's never done that.
Yeah.
His attention to detail, especially when we're winning. I mean, there was one thing that happened in 1991. I was a grad assistant. Duke beats UNLV in one of the great upsets in the semifinals of all time.
Incredible. Everybody thought that UNLV team was the greatest team ever constructed.
And they might have been.
Yeah.
They might have been. I mean, Duke was really good, but it was an upset.
Yeah.
The feeling among the team was the ultimate goal had been accomplished. So the next day on Sunday, when we went to practice at the arena, he didn't like the air of the team. So he called him back into the locker room and basically said, I don't like the way we're walking. I don't like the way we're talking. This isn't right. I believe, and this is just me here, I believe that a lot of coaches would have felt odd about rocking the boat before the championship game. His thing was, in our mental state, we're not going to win the championship if we're like this. He refocused everyone, like, we haven't accomplished the goal yet. The goal is Monday night. Had he not done that, we might not have won. Honestly, Don, right before the UNLV game, he did something extraordinary. North Carolina was playing Kansas in the other semifinal. They played the first game, and then Duke had UNLV in the second game of the semifinals. He was in a little ante room watching tape, and he would bring a player in to maybe show him something. And Kansas beat North Carolina. It was a game. Dean Smith got ejected at the end, and all this crazy stuff happened. But there was a feeling among everyone. Everybody felt it, that, man, can you imagine if Duke and North Carolina play in the final? That made the air heavier. So when North Carolina lost, I remember this like it was yesterday. He came out of his little ante room and kind of got on everybody. And he said, it's not okay for us to lose because they lost. It is not okay, because everybody felt a sigh. Like, I felt it. I know everybody felt a sigh when they lost. Duke, North Carolina felt it. That was like the ultimate trump card in the rivalry if Duke and Carolina played in the final. Can you imagine like the tension that would be around that kind of game?
Crazy.
So he would oftentimes talk about leading with the heart, going with your gut and all that stuff. He felt it and he wanted to address it. I thought it took a ton of courage, frankly, to do it that way, but it refocused everybody like that. It was an extraordinary moment. Those moments are really important in leading to winning, in refocusing a mental state. Christian Laettner is going to shoot 2 free throws, timeout. And he says, after Christian makes these, here's what we're going to do. He always had a way of taking the tension away. He did this one time in a game. We were playing North Carolina when I was a player back in the dark ages. It was at North Carolina back in Carmichael Auditorium. They had Michael Jordan and Sam Perkins, Kenny Smith, Brad Doherty. And it was a late game situation, a 1-point game. Everybody was feeling the tension. He gets in the huddle and he looks at us and he goes, isn't this fun? And we're looking around going, well, that Jordan guy's kind of a handful, but yeah, this is fun. It focuses on, we don't need to be worried about the outcome. Let's play and let it fly and have fun. We'll do what we're supposed to do. But man, this is why we do this. It was really kind of extraordinary.
So you're at a shoot around right now where you just watched Duke prepare for a game. They're going to play against Virginia. A couple of weeks ago, they were in Tallahassee and he invited me and went over to the shoot around. For all the years I've been around, suddenly music is blaring at the shoot around, which I remember coach not allowing in previous years. So he has continued to evolve, which is another great leadership lesson. I mean, even into this, his last season, he has continued to evolve as he is doing things to recognize what it takes to connect with the talent he has. Love your perspective on that evolution.
Coach K looks at it from the standpoint of, let the players decide the things that you don't really care about. I don't think Coach K really cares about whether music plays while they're warming up. But in the past, that was seen as, we need to be serious. We need to do that. They're stretching. If music is playing and they like it, is that a big deal? If there's music playing, like after a loss on the bus, I don't think he'd want music blaring in the bus, because he'd want the players focused on, hey, let's think about why we're in this position, why we're taking this somber bus ride back home. There are certain things that he does care about. The things that he doesn't care about, let the players decide. We have to practice on Sunday, but I don't care what time we practice. Let the players decide that. If they want music in this situation, that's fine. I remember as an assistant, he would be back in his coach's room. And when the assistants would be out on the floor coming back, the players are going out to warm up, he would always ask, how are the guys? I could never tell how they were, because sometimes the atmosphere was jovial and there might be music playing in the locker room and we'd go out and play poorly. Other times it's tension filled and tight and they'd go out and play well, or whatever it was, vice versa. You couldn't get a read on it. So we'd always tell them, they're great, locked in, they're great, because I couldn't tell. He's always had his finger on the pulse of things, and he's very relationship oriented. He jumps on body language. He spots things and addresses them before they become a problem. If he sees a problem, he addresses it right at the beginning. He doesn't wait for it to become a problem and then try to fix it. He fixes it at the very start. That requires attention to little things. Really, it's being present and observing. Like, his power of observation is next level. And he's very good at assessing, what are we today? Where are we now? I don't care what our record is. Where are we now? And he used the word slippage all the time. That happens a lot with him.
You've shared some great memories, lessons from time at Duke. I want to rewind just a little bit to young Jay Bilas at Rollings Hill High School in California. Now, we sent you a little bit of research work that we'd done, some amazing yearbook pictures. I got to tell you, number 45, looking good, rocking those short shorts. What an incredible head of hair.
Thank you.
You were in the Key Club, Forensics Club, National Honor Society, and no surprise here, voted best athlete. What can you tell us about that window? Is there a lesson you learned there that we might also know that will help us understand how you grew into a leader?
Yes. My mother was very concerned that I would not be a complete cultured person, that I was too focused on athletics. And I was a good student. I did what I was supposed to do. But she challenged me to do things that I didn't want to do. I was a competitive ballroom dancer as a kid.
No.
Yeah, I was. And I won a lot of competitions with my partner.
I'm filing that away.
I kept that a profound secret, by the way. I didn't want any of my friends to know I was doing that because it embarrassed me. My mom also pushed me into speech and debate classes when I was a kid. And Billy Kramer, who was so far away from athletics, you couldn't believe it. He was my teacher from intermediate school. And then he wound up at my high school as a teacher just by chance. And I had to take his courses. So I went to forensics competitions, speech and debate competitions around Southern California while I was in high school. And they were difficult. They were impromptu things. You had to stand in front of a panel of judges. There was never anything as intimidating in my life, including as a lawyer standing in front of a judge or a court of appeals, that scared me as much as that did. He also encouraged me. He actually made me do it. He said I needed to take the lead role in a school play. It was a high level thing called Lillian Hellman's Watch on the Rhine. I was the lead in the play. We had really intense rehearsals. And one rehearsal, I missed a cue. He jumped all over me. He said to me, "You have no excuse. When you play basketball, you have an opponent trying to stop you from doing what you're doing. You don't have an opponent here. There was no 6'8" guy jumping in front of you trying to keep you from hitting your cue." And he said something I've never forgotten. He said, "Don't be your own opponent." In my life, I've only had an opponent when I played basketball. That's the only time I've ever had an opponent. I've had competitive situations where I was competing, but I've never had an opponent except in basketball. Don't be your own opponent. Nobody's stopping me from preparing. Nobody's stopping me from executing in my jobs now, whether it's a broadcaster or a lawyer. The only time I ever screw up is when I've been my own opponent. Mr. Kramer taught me that. And until I had Coach K, it was as good a coach as I've ever had in anything.
It's pretty powerful.
Having my parents, my mother especially, and then Mr. Kramer challenge me in ways I did not want to be challenged was really important because I would do anything a coach told me. That to me was fun. These other things were not fun, but I navigated them. And as a result, I became much better. To the extent I've had any success, I would not have had it but for that.
Don't be your own opponent. Too many of the places that we ultimately don't achieve our greatest success, it's because we're stopping ourselves. Others aren't necessarily jumping in front of us. We're finding ways to stop ourselves. Now, I do have to ask an opponent question of you, though. We pride ourselves here on this podcast of research. We try to send it to you in advance. In addition to all the work done by our team, I turned to that bastion of investigative content, a Wikipedia, earlier. And there I learned that amongst the prized accomplishments in your legal career is that you represented a client and beat Barney the dinosaur in court. You defeated the Purple Menace. And Jay, I have to know where that win over Barney ranks among the many incredible victories you've had in life.
It's right up there, but it was an incredible pain in the rear end while it was going on. I was representing a costume manufacturer that had a purple costume that was being sold and rented that looked exactly like Barney. And when the owners of the Barney copyright and trademark, they have to sweep the nation to keep their copyright and trademark rights.
To protect Barney.
Yeah, to protect their interests. So I understood the case from the beginning. We tried to settle it, but they wanted to make an example out of our client. So they were asking for so much money, we had to take it to trial. And I always thought when I was in law school, boy, wouldn't it be great if I got an amazing constitutional law case or got to stand up in front of a court of appeals over something really substantive. And here I was with young kids that watched Barney all the time. That was my life for about a year, in my office every day. I mean, it was part of it that was horribly embarrassing, and then part of it that was really challenging. But I had to go to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, one step away from the Supreme Court, to argue about Barney the Purple Dinosaur. But the best part of that case, Don, was I subpoenaed Barney to the trial. The opposing side stood up in arguing to quash the subpoena by saying that, there are only a few of these costumes, they're in use around the world, it would be burdensome to bring it. Then they made a mistake by saying, and the costume is 6'8" tall, it weighs this much, it's unwieldy to bring it into court. And I stood up and I said, Your Honor, I'm 6'8", 235, and I got in here just fine. The judge ordered Barney to the trial. Quite a Pyrrhic victory for me, because when Barney did come, it was called Lions Partnership. They would not allow the costume to be in the courtroom without somebody in it. So it appeared on the loading dock, and every federal employee was down there to see it and brought their children. And I thought maybe I was too smart for my own good here. I won the motion, but I might have lost the case. It was memorable, to say the least.
But ultimately, you won the case. You defeated Barney. And for that, many of us who suffered the same fate as you did as a parent, we salute you, Jay Bilas. So I have to ask, the premise of this podcast is that a disproportionate number of Fortune 500 executives earlier in life were actively engaged in sports, either at the high school or collegiate level. And I know that you do a lot of work, especially on the V Foundation board, with others who fit this. Carl Liebert from Keller Williams, Michael McDonald. They've both been corporate podcast guests for us. And then I know you've worked with Taco Bell CEO Mark King, who played college golf, and Kevin Plank from Under Armour, who played football at Maryland. So you've been around a lot of these C-level executives who have sporting in the background. Now, would you agree that a sporting history has improved the leadership that you've been able to offer to others, and that you've seen some of these executives offer to others because of what they learned through sports?
It was extraordinarily helpful to me, and it's been something I've leaned on, but I'm not sure it's the only thing or necessary. One of the things I've learned is teammate is a really powerful concept, but being a great teammate differs from being a great classmate or being a great colleague. I was recently at Arizona for a game. Their coach, Tommy Lloyd, is a good friend and I think a fabulous leader. He's in his first year as a head coach after 20 years as assistant at Gonzaga with Mark Few. And I asked him something about some of his players that have made big jumps in their performance from last year to this year. I said, what's the difference in this guy? He said something extraordinary. He said, the difference is we have loved him. The last couple of years, every mistake he made was catastrophic. He was chewed out for everything. He was like an abused animal.
Mm.
His confidence suffered. He was afraid to make a mistake. And really all we've done is we've caught him doing something right, and we love him. I started thinking about that, sort of the idea of, do you love your colleagues? Do you think about where they're at?
Mm.
Are you there to be helpful? I've had some great teammates in my lifetime. When people ask me, who's the best teammate you've ever had? I've said two people. Reese Davis, who I work with at ESPN,
Mm-hmm.
is the best teammate I've ever had in anything. He is extraordinary. But I also point to a colleague of mine at my law firm. Her name's Tamara Kettner. She's no longer there, but when I was a young lawyer, I had my first hearing by myself where I wasn't sitting second chair. I got into the office early before the hearing. I'm preparing. I'm ready to go. 10 o'clock hearing. I was in at 6 o'clock. She came into my office and said, first hearing, big day. Are you ready? Yeah, I'm ready. I went over all the things I had done. Don, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. She said, do you know where to sit? And I said, no, I don't. She walked me through, here's where you sit. You're the moving party. Here's how you enter your evidence into the record. And she gave me a few nuts and bolts about that particular judge. Had she not done that, I would have gotten through the hearing, but I would have tripped all over myself to do it. And it would have been a great learning experience and all that, but it would have been a nightmare. She had the foresight and the empathy to think about a colleague and what he or she was going through, step in there and help. I've never forgotten that. And I've always tried to be that person for my colleagues when I can, to love your colleagues and to think about what they're going through so that you can help. Because when I was a player, we were all on the same bus, but we weren't all taking the same trip. People are going through things. They might be in a slump, they might have a problem at home, and you can help, but you have to be open to it and aware of it in order to help.
To be a great teammate, and I love that, by the way, I could feel the emotion in you, and I know you're a person that loves to laugh and joke, but that was powerful, and that idea of showing empathy for others, especially those who might not have the guts to ask for that kind of advice, just being willing to say, "I've been in your shoes," right? And then what empathy is, let me help you walk a little straighter. All on the same bus, but not always on the same trip. Powerful. You have worked with some great people of character. We've named a few of them just now. As I seek to learn from leaders, there's been some interesting questions that have come up that we've debated, but one I'd love to ask you. Do you think of character as a muscle? And if so, how can it be strengthened?
I've never thought of it that way as a muscle. You have to rely upon your character in whatever you are doing. When I think about character, I go to one teammate and friend and colleague that I've had over the years, and that's Tommy Amaker, who's now the head coach at Harvard.
Mm.
Tommy has always been a person who understands not only the task at hand, but all the layers that go around it. He's a next level thinker in that regard. He is concerned primarily with where he is at. So he's not thinking about the next thing or the last thing. He's thinking about where he is now and how can he be a positive impact beyond what people may think is his primary job. He's someone I've always sought out for advice. I run things by him all the time before I make decisions because I know he's going to make me think about something in ways I haven't approached it. His character is unshakable. His values, that's what I think character is. It's who you are and your foundation. And in a given situation, when things get difficult, you have to rely on not only what do I want to do here, but it's what's the right thing. And Tommy goes beyond what's the right thing. He thinks about what's the best thing.
Mm.
It's not just what's right, it's what's best. There's a difference there. A women's lacrosse player asked me about that one time when I mentioned you don't need to do just what's right, do what's best. She asked me for an example. When you go on a road trip and your family goes with you, nobody would say that the right thing isn't to spend time with your family the night before the game, but your family's there to support you, not to take up your time and not to distract you from the reason you're there. So the right thing may be to spend as much time with your family, but the best thing is maybe to say, I can't do that right now, but, and then spend your time on the task at hand. Then after the game, maybe the best thing is, you know what, I can't do this media thing or I can't do that. I'm going to spend time with my family after the task is completed. That's a small example of right versus best. It was the only thing I could think of at the time. Tommy thinks that way. And to have people that you know are rock solid in their belief sets, at the end of the day, that's all you have. You have to live with yourself and live with your decisions. And if they're based on your character and your values, I don't think you're ever going to be wrong. You might not have the result that you can explain to somebody from the outside that doesn't get it, but you'll know when you look in the mirror, I know I did the best thing.
Not just the right thing, the best thing. I like that. You wrote a book, which I loved, and we'll make sure to include in the show notes about toughness, developing the strength on and off the court. And you helped me rethink my definition of mental toughness. I don't think I had fully appreciated as you defined it. Can you walk us through how you think of mental toughness and give us a little bit of a sense of how they can develop more of that for themselves?
My definition of toughness in a player was pretty simple. It came from a lot of thought and consultation with others in basketball and out. But my definition for a player is easy to play with, hard to play against.
Mm.
When people ask me who's the toughest player you ever played against, very few people have heard of my choice. And that's a guy named John Ebeling, who I played against in Italy when I played professional basketball there. He was an All-American at Florida Southern University, a Division II school, and he was the toughest player I'd ever played against. He wasn't the most talented. That would be Ralph Sampson or Michael Jordan or Len Bias, guys like that. But he was the toughest because he did all the things that I could do, but they were difficult to do over and over again. He ran the floor every possession. He was physical on a box out every possession. And at the end of the game, my first thought was, I don't want to play against him again. He made everything difficult, but he didn't do it with incredible talent. Like when Len Bias flew by you, you knew I can't deal with that. That's a talent issue.
Just Len Bias.
It's Len Bias. And Michael Jordan soared over you and dunked it. Okay, I'm never going to be able to do that. There's nothing I can deal with there. There's no amount of work I can do that makes me prepared for that. But John, I could do all the things he could do, but he was relentless in doing them. So really became, am I relentless in doing the things I'm capable of doing? I had a teammate that you know named Mark Allery. Every year we had to run the mile for time as part of our training. After a couple of years of it, I was never satisfied with my time. So my junior year, I decided that I'm really going to train for this and I'm going to bust it. And I trained hard for it. And running was not a natural gift for me. So I hated it, especially running a mile. I never had to run a mile in a game at once. So I really trained hard for it. And I ran my best time. I ran a 5:40 mile.
Wow.
Allery didn't do anything unless he was doing it at midnight and didn't tell me. He ran a 5:11. I was so mad I couldn't believe it. How did that happen? You didn't do anything. And he matter-of-factly said, the mile is really about how much pain you're willing to endure during that time period. He's right. He was willing to endure more pain than I was. I really thought about that for a long time, that I need to be willing to endure more and get more out of me. Because when I worked out back then, I worked out really hard. But I think I fooled myself into thinking I was working harder so I could make my job feel easier. And that was the wrong way to look at it. And I changed it when I became a pro. I worked harder so I could be more productive. I should be just as exhausted after the game, but because of my capacity was greater, I could accomplish more during the game. That mindset change made me a much better pro than I was a college player. And I think it was available to me earlier, but I just didn't get it. Allery was one of those that helped me get it. The book was more about my failures in toughness and what I learned to try to become tougher and try to make relentless a part of my life. Like relentless is hard to beat, no matter your talent level. Relentless is really hard to beat. I try to be relentless in my preparation, but at the same time, acknowledging that being fully prepared does not entitle me to success in the moment. You still have to go in and perform, whether it's as a student, when I was fully prepared for a test. If I wasn't ready when the test was being taken, ready to perform, my results wouldn't match my prep. Same thing in a game. You have to be ready to perform when the lights are on. Those can be two different things, whether it's a basketball game or stepping into an argument. You have to be right and ready. Preparation puts you in the best position to be successful. It doesn't entitle you to that. Those are two different things. Understanding that was really helpful to me. Toughness is more meeting challenges and acknowledging that, hey, I may lose or I may not perform at my best, but meeting those challenges without fear of failure. Steve Kerr was really helpful to me in the book. And he had said something about taking the big shot. When I have to take a big shot or a big free throw, I accept that I may miss, and I'm willing to accept the consequences that come with missing. I am not taking that shot with concern about missing. I am taking the shot to make it. And I remember him talking about his routine. He has a free throw routine. He had shot what he considered to be a perfect free throw when he was playing against the Houston Rockets. Perfect routine, perfect follow through. The ball went perfectly through the basket. And from then on, when he took his routine, when he exhaled, he would say, Houston. Mm-hmm. And it would put him in the mindset of doing it perfectly. He wasn't thinking about missing. Everybody that plays golf is going to stand over a 3-foot putt that's meaningful for your member guest, your member, for a bet with your friend. And it's amazing how often you think about, I can't miss this. What happens if I miss? Instead of, I may miss. That's what competitors do. I may miss, but I'm not afraid of missing. That's a mental hurdle and a mental toughness issue that you have to condition yourself to perform under pressure. Everybody has to deal with pressure. I don't care whether you're an athlete, a lawyer, a doctor, a pilot. There's tremendous pressure in everybody's jobs. But are you willing to accept, okay, I may make a mistake, but I'm not afraid to make a mistake. I'm fully prepared and I'm going to execute. It sounds easy, but it's something you have to deal with.
And it is. It's a lot of work to frame your mind that way, without question. You know, the word team is, in my opinion, overused in the corporate world these days. Everybody talks about me and my team. And, you know, I can't wait to take my team to the next level or whatever it is. Truth is, most organizations are a group of individual contributors who maybe share the same business card. As someone who's participated in great teams, helped coach great teams, been around great teams, if you were helping one of our young executive leaders think about how to take those individual contributors and bond them together to create a true team, is there something you would advise to help them cross that bridge? Maybe a habit or a skill that would help them build a better team?
Well, first, I would say, and it may seem like a small thing, but I think it's a big thing, I would change the possessive from my team to our team.
Our team.
With a group of players, a coach may sometimes, in a position of authority, say, my players or my team. It's not your team, it's our team. You're in a position of authority, but everything's a group effort. If you want people to have a collective mindset, I think the person in a leadership capacity or the people in that capacity have to have that first and foremost in their minds. I can't act as the sole authority here and make it about me and my leadership. It has to be about the group and about the team. Sometimes those things can get away from me pretty quickly, and the way you couch it can be really important. I've had military leaders say, my soldiers eat first. That's important. And I think Coach K has always been like that. Coach K is the leader of the Duke basketball program, but he didn't go to Duke.
Hmm.
The players do. It's their school. He went to Army. Army's his school. Now, Duke is his program where he works, all that. There's a tremendous level of ownership there. But at the same time, there's a different feeling, I think, for the players. And he acknowledges that. It's sort of what I would call, Don, a we first mentality instead of a me first mentality. It's not about you as a leader. It's about the we first, we as a team. Where are we headed? Having that collective ownership, I think, is really important. You can't expect people to put the team first if the leadership doesn't put the team first. It may be a distinction without a difference to some people, but I think those things are really important.
No, I love that. I think that's great advice. That is, without question, a true point of value. You know, Jay, all the years at K Academy, you've been there, you've coached, you've never drafted me. I know you've scouted me. I know you've sat on the sideline. I know you've made probably pages of notes trying to define that Jaeger guy. I don't want to profess disappointment, but I'm just wondering, like, what am I missing in my game?
Well, first of all, I've counseled the leaders of the K Academy that the players should be in on the draft. Everybody should be in the room. But one of the things I learned through that, Don, was at the very beginning, I wanted everybody to have a good experience and I didn't want anybody to get hurt. So when a player would make a mistake or something like that, I was always, don't worry about it, no problem. And some of the players came to me, Ross Deutsch was one of them, said, hey, man, we want the real experience. When we make a mistake, we want you to get on us like Coach K would get on you. And I said, well, I don't know that you really want that.
Yeah.
So I went with a couple guys that we were working together, and we put a list together of what wins and loses these games. Our list was make your layups, make your free throws, get a hand up on every shot, don't give up easy second shots. And then the last one was do not turn the ball over. If you get a 5-second call, fine. Then we're playing 5-on-5 after they inbound the ball. If you throw the ball away and they steal it and go the other way for a layup, it's going to take us 5 possessions to get that back. So I'm going to get on you about doing that. I think it was my second or third year doing it. We had a player, they said, hey, get on us. And I asked them, are you guys cool with this? So one of the guys throws the ball away, turned over, layup. Next possession, does the exact same thing. I call a timeout and I said, not only did you do it once, you did it twice. I don't know what you do for a living, but if one of your employees did that, I would think being fired would be on the table.
For clarity, I'm not the person that he said this to.
It was not you. And 2 weeks later, I turn on the TV and I'm watching CNBC and watching a financial show. And he's on it. He's the chairman of one of the largest investment funds in the world. He oversees like $50 billion in assets. And I'm calling him an idiot for turning the ball over twice. So that's sort of the position you're in that thing.
I'm hoping to see you there in a couple of months.
Me too. Looking forward to it.
You know, Jay, you've done so much. You've given us your time today, but thank you for being a corporate competitor with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Always my pleasure.
I hope you had as much fun as I did.
Oh, I promise you it was more. Honored to be with you.
If you weren't laughing uproariously over the Barney discussion, I don't know how you were able to avoid that. What a hilarious conversation with one of the great people in all of sports today, Jay Bilas. There were several takeaways I had out of the conversation that I want to make sure are not missed as you go back and think about what you learned. I love that whole discussion about not being your own opponent and the idea that too often in life, we are in fact that. We are our own opponent. We are what steps between us and success. When we eliminate excuses, we eliminate an opponent and allows us to go to work harder on who we are. I loved him asking about whether or not you have empathy for and love your colleagues. You want to be a great teammate. You want to learn the lesson about how to be best as a part of an organization. Show empathy. Understand that your willingness to know where they are and what they are going through will make you a far better partner, far better teammate, far better leader. And then my final big takeaway was how he talked about the importance of separating performance from the player, about how Coach K is demanding but not demeaning in the way that he works with his players, and how that has taught Jay so much as a leader in his own right. It was an honor to have a chance to chat with my good friend Jay Bilas today, and I hope you learned as much as I did about becoming a great corporate competitor. If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man? Great, sir.
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. We are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access to Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but for our podcast listeners, it will be $49 with the code podcast at checkout. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to enroll. Thanks for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and a review. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday. To be the first to listen, subscribe to the podcast on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. Plus, as a thank you gift, you will receive a free chapter from one of my best-selling books on the habits of high-performing teams. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager, Yaeger, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I appreciate you.